Hey friends, it's me, Em again, and welcome back to my channel where we talk about all things sinister. If you are interested in true crime, or if you like all things horror related, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. That way you can join me for some morbid conversation. And let me just tell you, I hate people. I absolutely hate people. I know on this channel we talk about some of the worst, but let me just tell you, jumping into trying to find some lesser known, lesser talked about cases has really opened my eyes to such a variety of horrible, horrible people. And today's case is no different. Today's case involves an absolute monster. Now, if you're new here, you might not know this, but I'm a mama and I have two beautiful little girls. And those little girls are my world. I have one that's going to be 3 this summer, so she's about 2.5. And then my oldest is 4, and they are my best friends. I consider myself to be so lucky to get to hang out with these tiny little people all day, every day. So anytime I come across a case that involves children, it affects me differently than it used to when I was a single woman or before I was a mama. I mean, obviously, it's awful. Nobody wants to hear about little kids dying or being hurt or being assaulted. But now that I have two of my own, and I know that that feeling that you get when you have a connection with a child, whether it's your biological child, whether it's an adopted child, that connection that you have with that tiny person that you just love and would do anything for, seeing people treat children this way just, it affects me differently. Anytime I do a case like the one we're going to talk about today, the whole week that I'm researching it, that I'm reading about it, that I'm watching videos on it, I hug my kids a little tighter that week. I squish them a little harder. I snuggle them a little later. I don't know how people can do what people do to children. And like I said, that's what this case is about. This case is about an absolute monster of a person who takes the life of a 3-year-old child because he was upset with that child's mother. So Adam was the son of Patricia Gomez and Robert Billy, a couple who had lived together for 5 years in Nebraska before Robert decided to move in September of 1998 to another city. The two of them ended up splitting up. They seemed to have an amicable relationship. They agreed on custody arrangements of Adam, where Adam would stay with Patricia, and they didn't need any kind of official say so from the courts. They never actually went to the courts because of that. They came to an agreement and an understanding where Patricia would keep custody of Adam when Robert moved away. It was not long after the split that Patricia would end up dating a man by the name of Raymond Mata Jr. The couple would quickly end up living together, with Mata moving in either October or November of that year. So almost immediately after Robert moved out, Mata moved in. And originally, Patricia said that Mata showed no real ill will toward Adam. You know, he wasn't abusive. He wasn't verbally or physically abusive. The only cause of, any kind of indication that Adam bothered him was he would occasionally complain about Adam always being there and always being in the way. But other than that, he really didn't seem to be too bothered by the boy. So the relationship that Patricia and Mata had with each other was really pretty unstable, and they would not last long together. They would actually end up splitting, with Mata moving out of the home in February of 1999, and he would move in with his sister Monica. Now, Monica was also a very good friend of Patricia's, one of Patricia's best friends. During this time period that the couple had split, Patricia and Robert, Adam's father, would also end up hooking up. It wasn't like a rekindling of the relationship, from my understanding. They just basically hooked up. And also during this time, Patricia would end up filing for a restraining order against Mata. Now, I'm not sure why she filed for the restraining order. Like I said, their relationship was pretty unstable. However, less than a week since filing for the restraining order, Patricia and Mata would end up getting together and having sexual relations. A few weeks after this whole ordeal, Patricia ended up finding out that she was pregnant, and she would confide in her friend Monica, who is Mata's sister, that she was pregnant. Monica would go back home, the home she was sharing with her brother, and let him know that she was in fact pregnant. Mata would tell Monica that she needed to go to the doctor with Patricia and she needed to try to figure out when this baby was conceived because he wanted to see if this baby was his baby. And that's what Monica did. Monica ended up going to the doctor with Patricia, and at the doctor's office, the doctor estimated a conception day for the baby. And when Monica came home and told Mata the suspected date of conception, Mata decided that the baby could not be his because of when the baby was probably conceived. When he found this out, he would confront not only Robert, but Patricia as well, that he did not believe that the baby was his. And Patricia would admit to Mata that her and Robert had hooked up and it could be Robert's child. By now we're in March and Adam has a doctor's checkup that he needs to go to. And both of his parents took him to the doctor. So it was not just Patricia, but Robert went with Patricia and Adam to the doctor. While they were there, they were seen by someone who knew Mata and told Mata that the two of them were together at the doctor's office with Adam, which made Mata mad. But people need to mind their own business. To me, it's not, even if Robert and Patricia aren't together, whether they are or whether they aren't, it's nobody's business. But even if they aren't together, they lived together for 5 years. Adam only knew life with his two parents living together. It is not unusual or bizarre for both parents to have an interest in their son's health and an interest in their son's medical. It's not weird for both parents to go to the doctor. Both parents have a vested interest in the child. And so that shouldn't make, it's not like they were on a date. You know what I mean? They weren't on a date. They were taking their child to the doctor. But anyway, this whole ordeal really pissed Mata off. And he wanted Patricia to come over to Monica's house where he was staying in the basement to talk things out with him and to see him. And Patricia didn't want to go over there. So despite Mata begging and pleading and calling her, she refused to go over to Monica's house to see him. So later on that day, March 11th, 1999, Mata would go to Patricia's house. And for whatever reason, Patricia not only let him in the home, but she fell asleep on the couch while he was there, which to me, I've been in a few uncomfortable relationships before. I've never filed for a restraining order, but I've been close before. I can't imagine letting my guard down enough to fall asleep with someone that I had previously wanted to have a restraining order against. To me, that does not make sense. But that's what happened allegedly. So sometime during the night, Patricia would end up waking up and Mata was gone, but so was her son Adam. And she would call Mata that night to see if he knew where her child was. He would end up coming back to the home and he would tell her, your mom probably has him, or maybe Robert. And for whatever reason, Patricia just accepted this as, yeah, you're probably right. And she went back to bed. So this is what frustrates me so much about Patricia. Adam is 3 years old. He is a baby. And despite the fact that he is not home and nobody has told her, hey, I'm taking Adam. Hey, Adam's going to stay the night at my place. Hey, I'm coming to pick up Adam. Despite her not having any solid evidence as to where this child is, when she calls her mom and her mom asks, how's Adam doing? She says, oh, Adam's fine. So obviously her mom doesn't have him. And so she calls Monica and says, hey, do you know where Adam is? And Monica doesn't know where Adam is. And she calls Robert and says, hey, do you have Adam? And Robert denies having Adam instead of freaking out like a mother should. She accepts that she thinks Robert probably actually does have Adam because he's been complaining about not seeing him very much here lately. And so she just kind of convinces herself that's where Adam is. Now, Mata tells her that it's pointless to call the police because police won't do anything for the first 24 hours, which we all know, if you're in the true crime world, we all know that that's not true, especially with children. With children, the first 24 hours are the most important time frame when they're missing is that first 24-hour window. But even if that was true, I'm a mom, and I'm a mom to two young girls. And I told you at the beginning of the story, my youngest is almost 3 years old. I cannot imagine talking to multiple people and nobody knowing where my child is and me not contacting the police, even if I don't think it's going to go anywhere. I can't imagine not contacting the police, but she doesn't because Mata tells her not to. And so she doesn't. But it gets so much worse. So the following day, on March 13th, Mata asks Patricia if she would like to go out of town. And she agrees. And they go out of town and they stay overnight. And they don't get back home until the 14th. She has not seen or heard from her child since March 11th. And it's the 14th. When the two arrive back home, Mata asks Patricia if she would be willing to drive from Nebraska to Wyoming with his nephew's father, Jesse Lopez. And Patricia agrees. And the two of them drive to Wyoming to look into something for Mata. And she ends up coming back and arriving back home on the 15th. So it was finally on that afternoon that Patricia finally called the police and reported her 3-year-old son missing after not seeing him or hearing from him since the 11th. So even if she did think that police don't do anything for 24 hours, she still waited 4 days before she reported her baby missing. 4 days, and he's 3 years old. Now, not only did she wait 4 days to report her baby missing, Mata asked her to wait until he left before she called the police because he had active warrants out. And so she waited to call the police, which, I mean, I guess that's fine. We waited 4 days. What's another half hour while your boyfriend gets his shit together to get out of the house? So police begin the investigation immediately because it's a 3-year-old child that is missing and has been missing for 4 days. And one of the first places they go is to Monica's house to talk to Mata. And they knock on the door. And despite the fact that there are people in the home, nobody comes to the door. And this is because Mata told Monica the same thing. I have active warrants out for my name. I have active warrants out for me. Don't answer the door or I'm going to get arrested. And so nobody answers the door. So they decide to take a look around and see what they can see outside of the home. See if they can find anything outside of the home. And they do. They end up finding outside of the home in the trash, in the dumpsters, a garbage bag. And in this garbage bag is Adam's sleeping bag, is Adam's clothes that have blood on them, and a knife. So this was enough for them to get a search warrant the next day. So Mata would actually be at the police station answering questions when the police exercised this search warrant. And when they exercised this search warrant, they would end up finding a lot in the home. In the ceiling of the basement area that Mata was staying in, they found a human skull that had been crushed in, so some sort of blunt force trauma to the head. The skull had been removed from the body by some sort of sharp object. They found human remains inside of not only the dog food bowls for their family pet, but also within the bags of dog food that was there. So he had been feeding the dog, or it looked as though he had been feeding the dog human remains. They confirmed this by doing tests on the dog, and when they did tests on the dog, they found human bones within the dog's digestive system, bone fragments in the digestive system. They found human DNA on a plunger in the home, and they found human flesh in the sewer lines of the home that had caused the sewer lines to back up. They had found in the refrigerator a package that had been wrapped up in tinfoil. It had Mata's fingerprints on it, and when it was opened up, it was also human remains. And when they took all this and they took it to the lab and tested it, those human remains would come back as a positive identification for Adam. Now, the cause of death for Adam is not known with 100% accuracy because the biggest thing they could find was his skull. Like I said, it did have blunt force trauma. It did have, the skull was crushed in. They're not sure if the blunt force trauma is what killed him because without a body, they couldn't tell if he had been strangled or suffocated or anything else, or if it was just the blow to the head. What's crazy is after they found all this evidence in Mata's home, he would never once deny knowing about all this evidence in his home. He would never deny that the human remains were there, that Adam's skull was there. His defense was that Patricia had killed Adam, and he was doing his part to help her hide the crime. However, the only evidence of any injury to Adam was only at Mata's dwelling, was only there. They found blood on his boots that would match back to Adam's. All the evidence was found in that basement area, and nothing was found at Patricia's home to implicate her in any way. Mata would end up being found guilty by a jury of first-degree premeditated murder, first-degree felony murder, and kidnapping. He would end up receiving a life sentence for the kidnapping and the death penalty for the murder. What is so interesting about this case is the prosecuting attorney, Doug Warner, had previously been against the death penalty in previous cases. But this case was so cruel and so heartless that he actively sought it out for Mata. So Mata has since appealed his case. One of the reasons why he submitted for an appeal is that Nebraska had done away with the death penalty in 2015, but then reinstated it in 2016. And he said that this caused so much distress and stress to him that it amounted to cruel and unusual punishment. And I am sorry, but if you murder a 3-year-old child and dismember their body and then feed it to a dog, cruel and unusual punishment because he had to go through the stress of, am I going to die or am I not going to die? I'm sorry, that's bullshit. And that's exactly what the judge thought too, because his appeal was thrown out. So it's been over 20 years and he is still sitting on death row. And as far as I can tell with my research, I do not see any definitive execution date. I do not see him being taken care of anytime soon. Now, as far as Patricia goes, I couldn't find anything on her beyond this case. I couldn't find anything about her pregnancy. I couldn't find any confirmation if it was Robert's baby. I couldn't find anything on whether or not that baby that she was pregnant with was brought to term and is full and is healthy. And I don't know anything about that. I don't know anything about Robert as far as how he's handled things beyond this case. All I know is that Patricia wasn't charged with anything. And let me just say, I don't believe she had a hand in killing her son. I genuinely do not believe that she did. I believe that she was afraid of Mata. She had filed a restraining order against him. She knew the kind of person he was. I don't feel like she would be on his side to get rid of her child. I genuinely don't believe that. I'm not saying she should have been charged with murder or conspiracy for murder. But I feel like there should have been a child neglect charge in there somewhere. If you go 4 days without seeing or hearing from your 3-year-old child, I don't care that she testified against the murderer. I don't care that her testimony probably helped with the case. I don't care about that. I mean, I do. I'm glad he got arrested. I'm glad he got sentenced. I'm glad he got prison time. I'm glad he got the death penalty. But what mother goes 4 days without seeing or hearing from her 3-year-old child and does nothing about it? Goes out of town twice. I'm sorry, but if my child went missing, it wouldn't take 4 days for me to have the entire damn city out looking for them. It wouldn't take 4 days for me to completely give up sleep before I found that baby. It wouldn't take 4 days for me to be at the police station every freaking day until they got off their butts and helped me find my babes. I don't get it. I don't get it. I just don't get it. And like I've said before, I go back and forth on the death penalty. I don't know where I stand because I do see a lot of merit in both sides. I can look at it objectively and I see a lot of merit in both sides. But cases like this, cases with children are the ones that make me 100% able to say that I think the death penalty is right in some situations. Because how can you look at a baby, at a child, and hurt them and take their life? And I don't know. I hope he's miserable. And I hope that he has since found a conscience. And I hope it eats at him every single day that he's alive. Anyway, friends, thank you for taking time out of your day to join me for a chat about what an awful monster Raymond Mata Jr. turned out to be. And make sure that you're subscribed to the channel. And if you want to be notified the next time I sit down right here, turn on your post notifications about this channel. And then that way YouTube will notify you every time I upload a video and you'll never miss one. Until then, until next time, stay safe, take care, and I'll talk to you later, all right? Bye.